This is my grandmother. She works as a cleaner. On work days, she wakes up at 4 a.m. so she can catch the earliest taxi to work. Yet growing up, my family would sleep without food. So sure, hard work pays off. As I grew older, this stuck with me, and for some time, I was scared that despite my hard work, I would never be the next big thing. I no longer feel scared because I realize that I don't want to be the next big thing. And I look at where I am in life and I feel that I've gained a lot of success already. I mean, I graduated from the African Leadership Academy as part of a cohort of 120 trailblazing students from across Africa. I'm currently working in the youth development sector while being an international student thousands of miles away from home. My education is well funded by the Wayne International Scholarship Program, which has produced chief scientists, high-ranking UN officials, and even vice presidents. I managed to pull this off partly because I'm given credit for my work in almost every space that I walk into. I'm convinced that my grandmother is stuck in poverty because, unlike me, she's not receiving the credit that she deserves. And if people like her did, we could effectively end social inequality. I know that this sounds like an oversimplified solution to one of the world's most complex problems, but I'm not here to offer any solution. I'm here to share an idea that could help us reimagine the world we live in. And with that idea, I hope that you will walk out of this place with the willingness to just give people credit for their work, and the faith that in doing so, you're changing yourself and thus changing society. But first, I want to share a story. What a chimpanzee. Not too long ago, a chimpanzee named Jeff had only 5 bananas. Like most chimps, he really loved bananas. Jeff was a very smart chimpanzee who was exposed to a little secret. If you plant banana seeds and patiently wait, those seeds grow to become trees, and those trees give endless bananas. In the world of chimpanzees, that kind of secret is gold. Jeff wanted so many bananas, he could not possibly plant the trees by himself. So he went to one big old chimpanzee who had the tools needed to plant the banana trees. He told him that he wanted to start this banana farm. He promised that if the big old chimpanzee allowed him to use the tools, he'd give him 20% of the banana profits. The big old chimpanzee said, yes, and said, I'll invest in your banana planting farm. But remember, Jeff could not plant all these banana trees alone. So he found 10 hungry chimpanzees who had no bananas at all. He promised them if they worked very, very hard on the farm, he'd reward them with 1 banana each. He called this tree planting farm the Banana Zone. And the farmers got to work. Eventually, the farmer chimpanzees produced 50 bananas. The Banana Zone farm was literally chimpanzee heaven. All kinds of bananas were there. So, you're a very happy chimpanzee. As promised, Jeff gave each one of them 1 banana. Just 1. But the farmer chimpanzees paid off. Jeff was now left with 40 bananas. And as promised, the investor chimpanzee received 20% of the profits, which is around 8 bananas. Jeff then took 15 fat bananas for himself. Fat ones. And he used the rest to expand the Banana Zone farm. In 2020, the investor chimpanzee was a banana millionaire, and Jeff was a banana billionaire. The wealthiest primate in the entire world. This was despite the fact that the chimpanzees who worked on the farm remained poor. I mean, do you think a single banana is enough for a chimpanzee in a world where some chimpanzees have 15 fat bananas? Although they were not satisfied, they couldn't quit because in the chimpanzee world, it was understood that having 1 banana is better than having no banana at all. You might be sitting there thinking to yourself, gosh, Jeff is such a greedy chimpanzee. But I think that if you and I were in Jeff's position, we'd most likely do the exact same thing. Sadly, our human society resembles this chimpanzee society. I say this because I've worked for a number of youth organizations, and I've seen many young people who care deeply about their communities, coming up with incredible ideas, mobilizing other young people to join them, succeeding at making their communities better. Even though they don't do it alone, they're the only ones who reap the bananas of their labor. I've seen entire articles celebrate the genius that is this one person who took matters into their own hands, who changed their communities for the better. These fantastic young people who are celebrated as trailblazers in their communities often forget those who celebrate them that they did not do it alone. They simply forget, or like Jeff the chimpanzee, they don't mind taking all the bananas. By giving himself so many bananas, Jeff the chimpanzee was simply taking all the credit, like many leaders do around us. The act of taking sole credit for collective work is true across the board, from fictional chimpanzees to young community leaders to the politicians at the very top of our governments. They're all a symptom of a chimpanzee society that has taught us that we need to take credit for our work without teaching us how to offer it to others where it is due. The fact is that the Banana Zone Farm could not succeed without the farmer chimpanzees. Just as many organizations in our society cannot exist without the minimum wage employees. But Jeff values his ideas and his work way more than the work of the other chimpanzees. So he's just created himself with more bananas, disproportionately more. So let's agree. Chimpanzee society is bad, right? Right? But how do we make society less like chimpanzee society? To try and find the answer to this question, I spoke to my former African studies teacher from the African Leadership Academy, Mr. Thabang. A few months ago, he went on a trip to Zanzibar. While there, he met a young man named Simo. Simo is a part of a group of young fishermen, and Mr. Thabang was told that they'd be going fishing. Out of an unending curiosity to continue learning how resources are shared, Mr. Thabang asked to join these strangers that he had just met. The group agreed, and off they went on a fishing boat just off the shores of Zanzibar. At the end of the long afternoon of fishing, the men shed the fish that they had caught in 5 roughly equal buckets and went their separate ways. Hearing this story of these fishermen gave me a lens to view my fictional story about chimpanzees. Although we may not know who it is, we know that one of the fishermen initially came up with a fishing idea, and that only one of them owns the boat that was being used. Like in the story of the Banana Zone Farm, one is the ideator, one is the capital investor, and the others are the workers. Except in this fishing community, the ideator and the investors don't take a disproportionate amount of fish. They don't do this because they recognize that everyone is important in making this fishing endeavor possible. That is truly where it all begins. Teaching everyone to see others as important contributors so that they can give them the fish that they deserve. This community that I just described may sound like some sort of far-fetched, idealistic utopian society, but unlike that fictional chimpanzee society which resembles our world, this fishing community is real. Real people. We don't need to imagine it because it already exists. Scale this up and you realize that this fishing community is possible even when we have 300 fishermen. It's not some sort of theoretical imagined utopia. I think of these fishermen and they prove that we are not entirely powerless in the fight to make our world less like a chimpanzee society. They're an exceptional example, and they give me hope that we can make our world less like a chimpanzee society. That's because the real driver of inequality is not Jeff the chimpanzee, who has the power to make decisions about who gets how many bananas. The true driver of inequality is a society that offers Jeff a rationale to base his decisions to take all the bananas for himself. In the chimpanzee society, it's just bananas. Just bananas. But in human society, these bananas could come in the form of money, human dignity, personal security, finding fulfillment in our jobs, social status, tax cuts, being on the cover of Forbes magazine, Nobel Prizes, shooting yourself up to space. I mean, the list is endless. So let's decide. Do we want to live in a chimpanzee society or in a fishing community? I know my answer to that question. I certainly want to live in a fishing community, and I believe that we can build it. Stripped down to its bones, the real issue of the chimpanzee society is that the chimpanzees are never taught to give credit to others. So if you want to build a world that does not resemble the chimpanzee society, we need to start by giving others credit. This may sound quite trivial and ineffective, but it starts with me giving respect to the kitchen cooks who make my existence at Brandeis possible. It starts with me publicly acknowledging the contributions of the introvert who is too shy to present to the whole class, but worked very hard in the group. It means that whenever a professor says, "Fantastic presentation, Thabang," I respond by saying, "It was a team effort." It means acknowledging that I did not come up with the ideas, the visuals, and the sentences in this speech by myself. And when I commit to sharing credit with others, it truly becomes a part of who I am. It literally changes me. And when the time comes for me to lead the organizations that I will one day lead, I'll be prepared and committed to sharing credit with all their workers, both in terms of financial reward and personal recognition. In these organizations, it will be the norm to strive towards ensuring that everyone feels recognized and valued, and that no one remains poor while executives report breathtaking company growth. If you agree with me, take the same steps. Start thinking about how you will start recognizing the people around you for their work. Make it a point to share this idea of a fishing community with your children, if and when you have them in the future. Tell them why it matters to aspire to be like the fisherman. Teach them to tell it to your grandchildren, who will then teach it to your great-grandchildren. Teach them to value their own hard work, but more importantly, to value the work of others. This way, when they establish the mega fishing corporations of the future, they'll be ready to recognize the value of their ideas, but also fairly recognize the value of all the other fishermen who make it possible. If they see everyone as a valuable contributor like the fishermen in Zanzibar, they'll respect them, reward them with acknowledgement, and pay them what makes sense for the scale of their work. In this fishing community, they'll get rid of the banana zone farm-like workplaces where people like my grandmother have to wake up at 4 a.m. but remain poor. But we must be aware. The children of the future will be bound to follow in the example of Jeff the chimpanzee if we do not model the society we aspire to live in. So as we prepare to raise them, let's start today by being the role models that they can follow. We start by recognizing everyone who contributes in the everyday work that we do. That is active. And when we credit people in our daily lives for the small things again and again, it becomes ingrained in the fabric of who we are. One day, when we have the power to decide how major resources that affect people's lives are distributed, we will choose to act like the fisherman rather than Jeff the chimpanzee, because that is simply who we will be at that time. So will our children. One thing's for sure, we cannot eradicate inequality by forcing policy on those that it benefits. It's been tried. Truly, it has. But maybe we can eradicate it by committing to build our fishing community. It truly begins with you and me, here and now, in the space, with us committing to give people credit that they deserve in all its forms. And if we do that, we could inspire an entire society to learn how to share credit like the fishermen do. You and I can play our tiny role in dismantling the mechanisms that rob people like my grandmother of the credit that they so deserve. Maybe if we succeed in committing ourselves and our children to build this fishing community, people like my grandmother would never wake up at 4 a.m. and remain poor. Now, to those who are not listening throughout this talk, I see you. Here's what I said. Normalize giving other people credit for their work. It could truly be the first step towards eradicating social inequality. I'm now a fisherman, and I hope that you do not remain a chimpanzee. Thank you.